All right, in other news, Russia has conducted fresh strikes on Ukraine's Zaporizhia region. Ukraine says Russian forces carried out 567 attacks over the last 24 hours.
Rescue workers say one person died and 26 were injured. Biggest Russian drone and missile attack of the war. Ukraine says Moscow fired 550 drones and 11 missiles overnight.
The night sky over the Eastern Front was never quiet anymore. Russia had pushed wave after wave of drones into Ukraine, hoping to overwhelm its defenses, hoping to crack its cities and grind down its soldiers. On this night alone, they launched 180 unmanned craft, some cheap Shaheds packed with explosives, others reconnaissance units guiding the fire of artillery batteries. Alongside this aerial storm, 120 tanks rumbled forward across muddy ground, their turrets swinging, their treads carving scars into the earth. Moscow wanted a breakthrough, a decisive strike to crush Ukrainian morale. But what unfolded was the opposite. The attack turned into a firestorm, one that left Russia reeling. The first drones appeared on radar like a cloud of gnats, their numbers meant to exhaust Ukrainian anti-air systems. But Ukraine had learned. Months of drone swarms had forced innovation. Operators lit up the sky with flak from mobile guns, electronic warfare scrambled guidance systems, and shoulder-fired missiles knocked out the heavier drones.
To Russia launching a massive aerial assault against Ukraine, the biggest since the invasion more than 3 years ago.
Ukraine and Russia are exchanging fire on multiple fronts. Bridges are being destroyed, cities are burning, and oil depots are under attack. At least 7 people were injured in a missile strike, while 2 others were hospitalized, and 23 private homes, 12 apartment buildings, and a post office suffered damage.
Dozens fell before they could reach their targets, bursting like fiery stars in the darkness. The ones that made it through slammed into decoys, wooden tanks, false radar stations, and fake artillery placements Ukraine had scattered across the countryside. Explosions lit up empty fields, while the real positions stayed hidden, untouched. Meanwhile, Russian tanks pushed forward in tight formations, hoping to exploit gaps. They didn't realize the ground had been carefully prepared. Minefields stretched across their path, funneled them into predictable channels where Ukrainian artillery was already zeroed in. The first blast hit the lead vehicle, flipping its turret skyward in a plume of black smoke. Panic rippled through the column as more detonations followed. Some tanks swerved, exposing their thinner side armor. That was when the javelins and NLAWs struck. Ukrainian infantry, hidden in tree lines, fired with precision, their missiles streaking into the night and punching through steel. Within minutes, the advance bogged down, Russian engines burning, crews abandoning vehicles as chaos spread. But the real blow came from above. HIMARS systems, carefully conserved and repositioned, unleashed salvos of rockets guided by real-time drone surveillance. Each strike tore through clusters of armor, secondary explosions chaining across supply trucks and fuel carriers that had been pushed too close to the front. The battlefield lit up orange, a line of fire stretching across kilometers. Soldiers described it as the ground itself erupting, a man-made volcano swallowing everything in its path. Russian commanders tried to regroup, ordering the remaining tanks to push through, but by then the firestorm was unstoppable. Precision-guided artillery picked off stragglers, while loitering drones hunted survivors hiding in fields. The cost was staggering. Out of 120 tanks, more than half were destroyed or disabled in a single night. Of the drone swarm, almost all were neutralized, shot down, jammed, or tricked into striking fake targets. Russia had thrown enormous resources into the assault, yet Ukraine turned them into wreckage. The psychological blow was as important as the physical. Videos circulated online within hours. Charred tanks, drone fragments scattered like toys. Russian soldiers retreating in disorder. Ukrainian troops filmed themselves standing on captured armor, waving flags, shouting into the smoke-filled air. The message was clear. Moscow's mighty assault had failed. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of falling back to regroup, Ukrainian forces surged forward. For weeks they had been waiting, conserving ammunition, knowing Russia would try to overwhelm them. The moment the enemy lines broke, Ukrainian units launched counterattacks. Mechanized brigades rolled into the gaps left by destroyed tanks, striking supply depots, capturing trenches and cutting off retreat routes. Russian troops, stunned from the failed offensive, found themselves suddenly on the defensive. A planned strike turned into a rout. In one sector, Ukrainian special forces used quadcopters to drop explosives directly onto fuel convoys, creating fireballs that lit up the horizon for miles. In another, engineers rushed forward to clear paths through minefields, allowing armored vehicles to push deeper. The counterattack wasn't reckless. It was precise, calculated, designed to exploit the exact weaknesses exposed by Russia's overconfidence. Every destroyed tank became cover for advancing infantry. Every downed drone became propaganda, proof that Ukraine could not only survive, but strike back. By dawn, reports flowed in that Ukrainian units had pushed several kilometers past the original front line. Russian communications were in disarray. Some units had been cut off entirely, surrounded in pockets. Prisoners spoke of confusion, of commanders screaming orders that contradicted each other, of soldiers refusing to drive burning tanks into certain death. Russian state media, usually quick to declare victory, stayed silent for hours, then issued vague statements about tactical regrouping. But no one could hide the scale of the disaster. Satellite images the next day showed fields littered with blackened wrecks, long lines of craters marking where rockets had torn through convoys. For Ukraine, the victory wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. The image of 180 drones and 120 tanks turned into a firestorm became a rallying cry. Citizens cheered in cafes and shelters as they watched footage on their phones. Soldiers on leave rushed back to their units, inspired by the momentum. Internationally, the strike reinforced Ukraine's case for more weapons, more air defenses, more long-range firepower. Western capitals, impressed by the efficiency and resilience of Ukraine's defense, pledged additional support, sending a message to Moscow that escalation would only strengthen Kiev's allies. Russia, meanwhile, faced hard questions. Why had so many tanks been committed in one push? Why had drone swarms failed despite the vast resources poured into them? Military analysts pointed to overconfidence, poor coordination, and underestimation of Ukrainian adaptation. Others suggested desperation, that Moscow needed a symbolic win and instead suffered a symbolic defeat. The losses strained not only material reserves, but also morale. Soldiers posted grim messages home, describing fields of burning armor, comrades lost in explosions, the sense of fighting a war that could no longer be won. What happened next cemented the moment as a turning point. In the days following the battle, Ukraine launched further raids behind Russian lines, targeting ammunition depots and command centers. Each strike compounded the disarray, forcing Russia to retreat from several forward positions it had spent months fortifying. The momentum shifted, not dramatically, but undeniably. For the first time in weeks, the initiative belonged fully to Ukraine. The firestorm wasn't just destruction, it was transformation, turning defense into offense, despair into determination. And yet the war remained brutal, grinding, uncertain. Both sides knew victories could be temporary, gains fragile. But on that night, when Russia hurled its machines of war in overwhelming numbers, Ukraine met the challenge with cunning, precision, and firepower. 180 drones became falling stars, 120 tanks became burning husks, and the battlefield turned into an inferno that consumed Moscow's ambitions. Out of that firestorm rose not just survival, but defiance. It was proof that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the will to resist could turn the tide, and that sometimes the moment the enemy tries hardest to break you is the moment they break themselves.